are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made.
So much for the strategic ambiguity towards the defense of Taiwan that has long been US policy.
We support the one China policy. We support all that we've done in the past. But that does not mean China has the ability, the jurisdiction to go in and use force to take over Taiwan.
Joe Biden has made 3 similar statements in the last year, so maybe he means it. Arguably, the much bigger mistake is his decision not to let Taiwan in the newly launched Indo-Pacific Economic Framework.
So we stand firmly with Japan and with other nations not to let that happen.
That said, as is so often the case, his press team was quick to step in and walk back what appeared to be a policy shift. But it does make us wonder if Mr. Biden's doing it intentionally. He is, after all, a master of the verbal muddle, and if it is a routine, it may give Chinese President Xi Jinping some pause about the costs of an invasion.
My expectation is it will not happen. It will not be attempted.
Under the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act, Washington committed to arming the island democracy to defend itself, but was unclear, hence strategic ambiguity, about whether American forces would join the fight. Such is the constancy of White House walkbacks, the problem is that no one can be sure what the US policy now is. No such confusion in China, of course.
Taiwan is an inalienable part of Chinese territory. The Taiwan issue is purely an internal affair of China and cannot be interfered with by external forces.
It was during Mr. Biden's visit that China and Russia flew nuclear-capable bombers over the Sea of Japan.
We are entering a world that is becoming more unstable, and the potential for significant international conflict between great powers is increasing, not decreasing.
And one lesson of the war in Ukraine is not to wait until the invasion begins to start sending enough weapons. Send them now to make deterrence more credible.
We should learn from what is happening today to our other allies, to Taiwan, especially for the weapons that they want to purchase now. Give them the ability to defend themselves.
Indeed, some of Mr. Biden's critics want him to listen to his own advice.
You don't want ambiguity in dealing with Beijing. You want them to understand an attack on Taiwan will lead to a very large war that they will lose.
China has built its military to be able to overwhelm Taiwan's defences with an amphibious and aerial invasion, but it's also built a force to prevent the US from rapidly reinforcing Taiwan with air and naval assets. China also has a long-range missile force that could cripple US bases and airfields in the region.
So much of the future of the world is going to be written here in the Indo-Pacific over the next several decades.
And that's why it's so odd that Taiwan wasn't included in the 13-nation Indo-Pacific Economic Framework that the president rolled out during his tour of Asia. The new platform, which includes Japan, South Korea, India, Australia, New Zealand, and much of Southeast Asia, is clearly intended to counter China's rising economic influence. And while the framework is disappointing in its overall lack of ambition, for example, it includes no reduction in tariffs or trade barriers, which would help the world economy, it is at least an attempt to get back in the Pacific mix on matters other than defense and security.
Mr. President, is the policy of strategic ambiguity towards Taiwan dead?
No.
Could you explain?
No.